Hi guys, it's Amarah, musician among other things, and today my husband and I are coming to talk about the first year of marriage because tomorrow is our first anniversary. I remember I used to look up videos like this back when I was engaged, dating, or even when I was single, just curious about the first year of marriage, and I saw a lot of videos that were very much like, oh, it's so hard and it's so challenging and all these things. And I don't know, I think we have a slightly different perspective to offer. So, yeah. I think we should maybe start out just explaining a little bit. For those who don't know, we dated pretty quickly. We were dating for 6.5 weeks before we got engaged, and then we planned our wedding in 10.5 weeks. So it was about 4 months of knowing each other, really, and but we just felt so much peace and guidance to proceed from the Lord. So, and we got married June 20th last year, and Marshall is a teacher. So he had the summer off, which was awesome. I ended up taking an extra month as well off of my work. And then in general, I don't work a lot. So even when I went back, we had a lot of time together.
Yep.
And it was really, really nice time to just get used to living with each other and be around each other a lot.
Yep. Yeah, well, I'd say, right after our wedding, obviously, we had our honeymoon to California. And the day we got back, we closed on a house. And so we drove from the cities after landing at the airport and drove up, met with our realtor, and then went and closed on the house. That was literally our second thing we did as a married couple was
close on a house.
And so the first several weeks were all about, like she kind of said, getting used to living with each other, but also both of us getting used to a brand new property and home and
moving and organizing.
Yeah, getting everything moved in. Absolutely. And all the uniquenesses that every place has. And had some kind of housewarming-ish type situations where people came and we made food and
yeah, we had some company after a couple weeks. Hosted some family for meals and stuff, which was fun because I enjoyed doing that.
Yeah. So it was early July, and so then we had about a month and a half kind of together, and that was, at least in my mind, was all still kind of getting used to both a new roommate and a new home, a new living place, and so there was lots of everything was very new and exciting, but it was kind of like, oh, it's cool to own a home, and then all the responsibilities and things kind of hit of like, oh, I have to mow the lawn now. Like all these things where going from an apartment didn't really have to worry about those things.
Right. But there were more responsibilities, more homeowner things to learn about, like propane and mowing and things. But for me, I didn't feel like it was a crazy adjustment. I knew that my my couple of years that I lived alone, I was still living on my parents' property. And so I was still kind of a part of some of those systems and didn't completely have no responsibilities. So I think that adjustment was pretty easy for me, although there were some differences, obviously. We ended up cooking more, which is great.
Yes.
Cooking more good food. Thankfully, we both love cooking, so we kind of shared that and still do to this day. It's kind of back and forth depending on who's more available and all that. I feel like a lot of times people talk about like roles and stuff when you're settling into a new space with someone and with a new person. And I don't know, we talked about that a lot before we got married, but we didn't have like I didn't feel like we had a huge problem adjusting to taking on and working hard together to take care of the home and everything that had to get done. We both, like we don't have 100% traditional roles. Like we were both working a little bit here eventually anyway. And we both enjoyed cooking sometimes, cleaning sometimes. I do a little more of the cleaning, but he does a little more of the outdoor stuff maybe, but yeah, I don't know. It just seemed like it fell into place quite easily roles wise. There was not really any argument on like, oh, can you just do more, pull your weight around the house or anything? No.
Yeah.
Like we just kind of both entered willing and ready to work hard and serve each other.
Yeah, we were aligned, or had those things in common for sure. Whereas a couple who has very different ideas of what they want to look like if one of them wants to be very traditional and the other wants more egalitarian or whatever, where things are split pretty evenly, like I could see that transition being a lot tougher. But
if you gotta talk about it.
That's all pre-marriage things, not once we move in. Okay, who's gonna cook? Who's gonna do laundry and all those things? Who's gonna mow the lawn? But for us, we were, I'd say, slight leaning toward traditional, but definitely both kind of. It doesn't really matter who does the dishes as long as they get done.
Yeah, it wasn't like we're sitting waiting for the other person to do things. Like
you're the man, you're the woman.
Yeah, like we kind of just we picked up where the slack was. We did what we needed to do, and as changes happen, like how much you're working, how much I'm working, and other changes later on, we adjusted accordingly, and we've had varying roles from the beginning. I think that flexibility has been a blessing.
Yep. And so we kind of had a time to use that stuff that summer, and then that early fall, and then was it early November? Or was it late October?
Mid-November.
Mid-November, everything drastically changed. And so we're pregnant.
Yeah, we're pregnant, in case you didn't know.
And so that was something we had talked about waiting several years just to kind of enjoy, in our plan, to enjoy kind of just young married life together and kind of just love on each other and get to know each other.
Some travel, some good foundation making.
But God had different plans than that, and so a few months into marriage,
it was 4 months in. Yeah, we became pregnant.
So, got a little baby boy on the way.
Yeah.
But yeah, and so at least my mindset of what the first year of marriage was going to be was that transition, getting used to things, but then just kind of enjoying marriage, and I have. But in that plan, there was not even a thought of like, we're going to have a kid soon, or like that's not going to be a part of it. And so that was a big change. And that there was an adjustment period to that fact of like, oh, wow.
I will speak on that in a minute. I just don't want to skip over when you went back to work and I was working. I work part-time all the time. I don't need to work more financially, and it's a good balance. But when he went back, it was an adjustment for me to like, okay, now I am taking on more tasks, and it was totally fine, but it was an adjustment. And I remember during that season also feeling like a little bit like, wow, I don't have my own freedom anymore, or my independence financially and a little bit physically, I guess, just like, and it wasn't bad. Like, that's just a part of marriage that is good and beautiful, but it's a change that you have to adapt to and adjust to and talk about, like, because we're now a unit. We're no longer living separate lives. We're living together. We're consulting each other. We're communicating about everything. And so I just remember feeling that a little bit. And it was worse when I didn't have as much extra money at the time to spend. So I was like, oh, I can't do these things that I really need to do, or, but we ended up talking and working through that, obviously. I think communicating well and often has been the most important thing, just to make sure no one's harboring any hurt feelings or anything like that. So, okay, so then pregnancy. Yes, I found out I was pregnant. I'm 22. He's 27. He was 20. No, he had just turned 27 at the time. And I am young, guys. I'm young. I was down to wait for a couple years. And I think that it just hit me. I was like, I mean, the first day was really hard. My first reaction was not positive. I was crying and sobbing, which is never, ever, ever how I imagined I would ever respond to finding out I was pregnant. I never thought I'd be like, oh no, But very quickly I knew it was important to shift my perspective with that, and to not be selfish, and to accept what God has given us. A beautiful gift, by the way, which we are so excited for now. But there was some adjustment period there. And then very quickly I became very sick for months. Pretty much late November, almost right when I found out, until middle February, maybe?
attached to the pregnancy though, like not like
yep. Just
anything else.
like, trimester 1 stuff, and it lasted over half of my pregnancy. So it wasn't just T1. It was up until at least like 22 weeks before I was able to function at all. And so think about this, like, we're newlyweds and I'm unable to lift a finger at home, unable to contribute to the household at all. The only thing I could still do was work for some reason, by God's grace. I don't know how.
There were some tough days in there too,
very tough days at work, but I still worked. And I also was completely unable to have any affection or touch or closeness with my husband because that triggered my nausea. And
like my shampoo and
everything, and it was so different. It was, for me, a season where I really had nothing to give, and I wanted to give, but I literally couldn't. And so there was also a season where you ended up having to do everything with no payment, very much unconditional love, you know, which was actually really beautiful. And I think that really cemented our relationship, actually, for me. Like, it made a level of depth that only going through things like that together can give you a deeper connection and intimacy. And also, like, I just saw Jesus's love so much through you, and it just touched me so much. I had to release expectations on myself to do more because I literally could not. And I had to allow him to step in, working overtime anyway, and come home and do everything. And never, ever once did you complain or make me feel bad or anything. Like, he was just 100% ready to serve, and it was just beautiful.
Well, I will say I didn't like stay up on everything. Like,
everything that mattered was done.
I mean,
we ate.
We ate.
The dishes got done now and then.
The house kind of fell into a little bit disarray of
It
just
did.
like vacuuming and dusting and like just little things like that where, and so it wasn't like I was completely killing it on my own. Like, I don't even need my wife to do anything. Like, that was, I don't know, but
in my eyes, he just blew me away with all he was capable of and all that he did without any reciprocation. I mean, I could barely manage to just maintain a somewhat pleasant presence, you know? Like, I tried my best. My goal was to not get irritable and not lash out at him. That was my goal. That took all my energy.
And you succeeded.
And I think I did,
Yeah, you did. Yeah. No, and attached with that, like, how much discomfort and, like, just fighting to not throw up and like stay positive and sometimes even like awake. I don't know. It's just like, I think you did a very good job. Yeah, never really felt attacked or like it was me versus the world or anything like that. I didn't feel like that at all. So
yeah,
it was just one of those things where she's creating life and I'm, trying to make things work as best I can. So
and I don't know. It was such a hard season for me. And probably hard for you too, to see me like that and to pick up and do so much more. But it was so beautiful coming out of and looking back and seeing the growth that came from that. And I feel like our connection deepened and strengthened too.
That being said, if any further pregnancies aren't as difficult, we won't.
We will take it. We'll take an easier route next time if possible. But who knows? Yeah. So then, around middle of February, things started to clear up a little bit for me. I'm still pregnant and I still have symptoms all the time, but it's just nothing compared to that season. And so overall, I've felt a lot more pleasant, a lot more. I've been able to mentally and spiritually and emotionally like accept and embrace this change that's coming in our lives, prepare myself to become a mom, to become more selfless than I've ever been. And I don't know. We're both very, very excited now for that. And it's coming soon. I'm 35 weeks today. So very, very soon. But so I guess overall the year was not difficult because of the little things, like the little changes for me. I don't know, like it wasn't, I mean, yeah, it's a huge change. Like we were adjusting from single life to married life.
But we, in one sense, had like a shorter window of that adjustment because we just got thrown into, we're going to have a baby. And it's like, oh, wow.
Yeah, like I was ready to lay low for a while, but then boom. And so it's like it kind of forced us to come to a level of maturity quickly. And
figure some things out.
Yeah. And I mean, people will tell you a lot of times like you should fight with your spouse before you, or your partner before you marry them. We still have not fought to this day. And what I mean by that is we've never hurt each other intentionally. We've never yelled at each other. No. We talk a lot. We discuss a lot. We have conversations that are uncomfortable. We, you know, it's not like relationship is not going to take any maintenance. It takes constant maintenance, constant effort. And so I feel like one of my big encouragements to you out there is if you're going into marriage with the right expectations, nothing too crazy, and you go in on the same page, able to connect and communicate and deny yourself sometimes and come to compromises, then you don't have to be a fighter. You don't have to go through the hardship and the pain of hurting each other. And, you know, I mean, you have to learn how to communicate, and everyone hears things differently or says things differently. And that's a process, but it's a process that you can choose to be patient through rather than let get to you and mess with things. Do you have any thoughts on that?
No, I think you summed it up pretty well.
Yeah, I just feel like I think I went into marriage expecting it to be a lot harder. But I also want to say that, like, I also prioritized having healthy relationships in my life with my parents, my siblings, my friends. And so I had a lot of practice how to have a healthy, good relationship and consider other people and deny myself. Like, yeah, people say marriage makes you feel selfish. Like, wow, I'm so selfish. I need to be less selfish, more selfless, right? I felt like maybe we both must have done some of that work before we got married, like in other areas of our life, just giving and loving. And it just seemed like marriage was just the natural next step that we were ready for, kind of.
Yeah, I wouldn't, like, if you had to have a list of like, what are 10 words that would describe your first year of marriage? I don't think hard would be, it might be my top 50. Maybe. But definitely not my top 10. Yeah. And I mean, you hear some couples, and whether it's, I don't necessarily want to say they weren't ready for it, but there's just some things they hadn't either talked about or communicated about or dealt with in themselves. Not that we're perfect by any means.
No.
But yeah, I don't know. It just hasn't been difficult. Like,
no.
Again, it's been an adjustment, and it's been different, and we've had to change how we've had to adjust as we went. Like there were things, whether it was financially or communication wise, like even for me, like I lived on my own for 5 years or something beforehand. So like I didn't have to tell anybody anything I was doing ever unless I wanted to. And so now it's like letting her know when I'm going to be home or what plans are, or if we get invited somewhere, like I had to shift that in my brain of like, oh, I have like another person that literally I have to touch base with constantly and like communicate about things. Whereas, so there's been those things, but yeah, I don't know. It's never been a challenge or a struggle.
No.
And not to say that if you do have a struggle or it is challenging, your marriage isn't good or isn't healthy. Like I don't think that's true either. But
I think
for
it
us,
really
it's been very blessed.
Yeah, it has. I think it really comes down to, like, what can we attribute to how it's been easier for us maybe than other people. I think it has to do a lot with various factors. One, God blessed our relationship, like brought us together. We are two people that he knows intimately and knew that would belong together, right? That's great, right? Compatibility falls into that. I think it is so much more important than some people realize to be compatible. And that means a lot of things, but just ultimately that you're capable of communicating well, understanding and respecting the other person and their differences. Compatibility is huge, because I had been in relationships in the past or whatever where my partner and I were not compatible, and even though I'm the same person that I am now and having a wonderful marriage, I would have struggled a lot more with that person.
Oh yeah, and I probably could say the same.
Compatibility is huge. And then also we made a lot of preparation. I think that sometimes Christian couples avoid certain topics before marriage fully, and then other ones partially. And I think that what we did a little different is, as a part of our preparation and our premarital counseling and all that, we also talked about some things that, you know, are big and deep and intimate and just a lot of different topics. Absolutely. And you can never stop talking and learning more about your spouse, because we always change too. But we went in not blind. Like, we were aware of what we were stepping into and confident that it would be a good mix. We talked a lot about sex stuff before marriage, but not to a point where we were in any compromising position or anything. No. But just, it was actually so important for me, like, as a woman who, you know, like, saved myself for marriage, and like, I was nervous and all these things, like, I needed to demystify a few things, to have some conversations, to even feel comfortable in that way with anyone. And so I'm so glad we did some of that before marriage. We actually read a book about that right beforehand, and was very helpful. Yes. Technically as well as emotionally and spiritually.
Yeah, absolutely. And I feel like there's so many things that you bring into a relationship, both people do, that are going to be dealt with eventually, or like are going to come to the surface eventually. Yeah. And you can either bring those things to the surface early, and I would say 99% of those things we did were talked about, whether it was intimacy or, you know, expectations or
roles,
pet peeves, you know, all these different things. And some things, you know, are a little bit more minor, like sort of the pet peeves thing. Like, it could be like, well, I just don't like it when you leave the toilet seat up. Right? You can talk about that beforehand, or it can come up later. And sometimes those things though, the later they go, the more issues arise from those things. Yeah. And so, in one sense, like, plug for premarital counseling and discussions and things like that. Like, bring as many of those things to the surface as you can.
Absolutely.
Because then, again, you kind of are prepared going in of what it's going to be like. You have a more accurate picture in one sense. Like, yeah, again, like, I don't know if I've had very many things where it's like, wow, I didn't think marriage was going to be like this. So I think we did so much work on the front end. Yeah. And both knew and were pretty honest of who we were. And so we had at least in my mind, had a pretty clear picture of what marriage was going to look like. Yeah. And so we didn't have all these expectations that weren't met, and we didn't have all these dreams that were just shattered. And it was like, oh, I don't know this person. And even though we didn't know each other for that long.
Yeah, and I can confidently say I know you way better than I did when I said yes. But again, like, this just again highlights the importance of know your partner, or know the peace and the guidance of the Lord. Because life is going to throw you so many curveballs. Like this, my first and second trimester, for example, a time where I may have died if I were on my own, because I honestly don't know if I would have eaten. Like, it matters so much that you make the right choice of partner. It matters incredibly. And we're lucky to have some supernatural guidance in that area too. But if you're, you know, dating, like, take the time to get to a point where, you know, like, beyond a doubt, this is a person that I can face every storm with. This is a person who is on my side, who will grow and change with me, and that I can love through their growth and changes, you know. So, and then I think one more thing I wanted to touch on is just, like you were saying, peeves. And it's funny because I tend to be a little bit more irritable than him naturally, meaning, like, certain things just bother me more, and he's very tolerant. He was raised in a bigger household, just very gracious, tolerant person. And so then I'm over here like, oh, there's just a few things that just annoy me, right? And I have to decide, like, one, how much does this matter? Is it something I can choose to overlook and just stop caring about? Because there are some things you can choose to stop caring about. And then if it's something that, like, just little, that just bugs you and you can't stop that, how you handle that is so important. Like, you're not just gonna be like, oh my gosh, you're so annoying, you're so loud, this and that. No, never ever do that. Instead, I would come up with solutions, whether that's distract myself or leave the room, or I could even just be like, oh man, babe, is it okay if you just don't do that right now? For some reason, I can't handle it. And then that's okay, you know? Instead of making him feel terrible for something that is so unimportant and so does not define his character. First of all, taking ownership of my own irritability. Like, it's not his fault that I'm feeling this way. It's kind of how I'm wired, and there's nothing wrong with him for that. So that was a good thing to learn, because I think peeves can actually bother people in marriage a lot more than
absolutely
than it should. It should be such a small thing that you have a system of how to deal with and how to work on. But people sometimes let the small things become so much bigger than they are, or like believe that there's like a sense of, oh, my husband just doesn't care about me, or things like that. It's not true. So and equally on the other side, like, there are some little adjustments you can make to help me be more comfortable, but you don't have to do all that work yourself. Like, I can also deny my irritability, you know? And all this to say, I don't think I've ever snapped at you for anything like that. For me, that's an adjustment I had to make, because I came from a slightly more touchy, irritable upbringing. And that's just something that I may always have to deal with a little bit more. But it's an opportunity. Marriage is an opportunity to refine yourself, to purify yourself, to continue to become a better person, a better version of you. And that's what we went, at least for me, went into marriage expecting. Like, marriage is going to
talked about that.
be a catalyst to my growth, to your growth, and to our growth together.
Absolutely.
And so see it as like an obstacle course or a weight room or something, you know?
You're gonna grow.
And learning to love all of that. And
I thought there was something you brought up that jolted some of my mind, and then I lost it.
Was it about peeves?
Maybe. Oh, yeah, a little bit. Oh, it's right there. It's like right past the curtain of my brain.
Regarding...
so much of, I guess, life, but relationships too, and marriage especially, there's only so many things that you can control.
Yeah.
Like, I can't control what mood she's in, really. Like, I can kind of affect that.
Yeah.
But, like, if she's in a great mood, like, awesome. If she's not, then my reaction to that is what I can really control, is what I'm trying to say. Like, circumstances and things are around you. You can only really control how you respond to things. And so even if it's just I don't know, maybe she just says something in a tone or a flippant way that I didn't appreciate or whatever, like, I can get all huffy and puffy about it and like, oh, well, she doesn't respect me, you know, and all these things. Or I could just be like, okay, well, she must not be in the mood, you know, or I got her at a wrong time or whatever. Like, so much of life, I think, and especially in marriage, people get focused and so, I don't know, up in arms over things they can't control at all.
Yeah.
And really, you just have to kind of see, okay, all right, this happened, this was said, this was done, things are out there in the world are going on like this. I can't really change those things, but I can change how I respond, how I react to those things. And to me, that's a very healthy and mature response to have to situations and relationship and circumstances. And that's one thing I've learned a lot in marriage is I can't control her. I can control me, and I can help encourage her. Like, I can help give her life, or I can help tear her down. But she's going to control her. She's going to do her, and I'm going to control me. And the more you accept that and kind of, you know, take responsibility for yourself, the better the relationship is. And honestly, I think the better your life is, which is a good principle for anyone from 5 years old to
99
and plus. But
yeah, we're not discriminating for age
that's right.
here. No, that's so true. And I don't know, just because someone's mood is off or whatever, it doesn't mean they're personally mad at you and they just want to hurt you. And you know,
Absolutely.
When you're in your moods, you have to regulate yourself. You can't just justify any form of communication that is harmful. But it's also so nice to have a partner who is receptive to that and does what they can to love on you and help you, even when some may believe you don't deserve it. That's unconditional love. So I'd say you're excellent at that. Yeah.
As are you.
Is there anything else we wanted to say? Any final tips, final encouragements?
Marriage is great.
Marriage is great.
Yeah.
I love it.
Yeah, everyone's journey and everyone's marriage is gonna be a little bit different, but it was created and designed for a reason, and it's been probably the best decision I've ever made. Besides, like, Christ.
Of course. All right. Well, thank you for watching our little video. We look forward to looking back on this in the future and just remembering this season. Yeah. Thanks for watching and enjoy the rest of your day.